I think it's time for you to talk about the best commander, and that's someone I definitely agree with.
So I'm just gonna call out the best commander of the Germans, and to me, probably if pound for pound, if there's this pound for pound rankings, I'd put him at the top of everybody. General Erich von Manstein, typical Prussian autocrat, military man. He also detested Hitler because he thought Hitler's the middle class nobody and he's the
Yep,
Prussian elite.
exactly.
But despite that, you could call it whatever, like audacity, arrogance, he had the skills to back it up. And this is actually seen that while he is chief of staff of Army Group South in Poland, he does quite well there. It's actually at the Battle of France where he comes out to the top. And that's because one, he's good friends with Guderian, and he was the original architect of the plan that was ultimately used. He believed of using one army group to just, as a bait, marching through the Low Countries, convincing the Allies that, yep, we're doing the exact same thing again, while another thrust goes through with the panzers in the Ardennes and cuts them off from the rear, bypassing the Maginot Line. And the problem is, this Wehrmacht commanders at the time did not want a war, and they shut him down because they knew if Hitler hears this, he's going to give Manstein all the freedom to execute and force others to do it. The problem is they did not shut down Guderian, and Manstein went via Guderian to present the plans to Hitler, who approved it. And we know what happens at the Battle of France, complete collapse of the land forces of the Western Allies for the next few years, on the continent at least. And during the Battle of Britain, he doesn't really do much. But in the like Operation Barbarossa, he is also put in command, and he was given a Panzer Corps. And surprisingly, he's one guy that gets a lot of leeway. So Hitler is one character who never really liked his generals to have a lot of power, initiative. Manstein was actually the I would call it the exception to that. He always could do as long as he followed the overall directive. Conducted the largest siege of Sebastopol, and he did win a pretty big victory at the Crimea, which in that battle he suffered only 38,000 casualties and inflicted almost 570,000 on the Soviets. So I think what 20-1 ratio. Then so he's done pretty well. He does start the initial siege of Leningrad, but I think it's then moved to an offensive when the Soviets are launching one of their offensives in the middle of second half of 1942. And with his army, he just has about 26,000 casualties, of which 6,000 were dead. But of the 190,000 Soviets that were sent into battle, almost 115,000 end up as casualties in that offensive. Then, as we talked about in a bit, he was supposed to relieve Paulus's army at Stalingrad, but he also realized that his army is too weak. He cannot go alone. He needed Paulus to also break up so that at least then, as Paulus's army withdraws to his forces line, his army will be in position to probably support them, and then they can withdraw the German line. And unfortunately, Paulus is Paulus. That's all I'm gonna say. And this is a massive disaster because the Italian, Romanians, and Hungarian troops that were guarding the flanks have been completely annihilated. and you now lost an entire German army as well. Then early 1943, he does see a great victory again at the Third Battle of Kharkov. Sorry, I was struggling to pronounce it. And in that battle, he does inflict casualties on around 1/3 of the Soviet forces. So that's around 87,000 casualties inflicted at a cost of 11,000 casualties of his army. So you can see he's quite effective. He was the primary general given the charge of Operation Citadel, which would develop into the Battle of Kursk. And this is where actually he and Hitler had major fallouts with. Hitler wanted to wait for the Wunderwaffe or the new Tigers and Leopard tanks to come in, his wonder weapons. And he wanted them in numbers. Manstein, recognizing that the Soviets are really building up their forces quickly, they're building their defenses. He wanted to start the attack immediately, and Hitler forbade him. Even the days when Manstein wanted to attack, Hitler would stop. And the day he finally got the permission, the Russian Air Force decided to just bomb the hell out of the Luftwaffe in that battle. Ultimately, in terms of casualties, we know that the Battle of Kursk, in terms of manpower, cost the Germans far lesser, but they've already suffered in reserves and manpower depletion and overcommitting themselves. This has stifled any offensive potential. So like Germany's last offensive in the east, which is now they're going to fall back on the defense. And you have multiple withdrawals. So like he has to withdraw on the Dnieper River with his Army Group South. And again, he loses a lot of men because of Hitler, since he's not allowed to go one step back. And this is pretty much the end of his career.